All right. Got it. Without even looking at it. I did it from there. All right. It's time to start my review series on the. Sorry. Had a ice cream sandwich like a half hour ago. Time to start the review series on Arrowverse. I guess I'm doing Arrowverse crossovers on the road to Legends of Tomorrow. So you're gonna get this one, the Legends of Yesterday and Today, or Heroes Fight Together, or whatever it's called. And then I'll get on to season 1. I think. Or do I have World's Finest? Is World's Finest? I'm counting that. The one between Supergirl and Flash. I might do that one before I do Legends. Start season 1 Legends tomorrow. But we are on Flash versus Arrow / The Brave and the Bold. Although it's just touted, it's just called Flash versus Arrow. Even though the Flash versus Arrow aspect is only in the first part. And so the first thing I want to talk about is the presentation of the crossover. So we're used to the big crossovers being connected so much. This is not connected. They're 2 episodes of a TV show, and they just so happen to have characters from the other show. They're each one episode of a different TV show with the characters kind of just showing up. There's 2 different villains, there's 2 different stories, and they stick to the formats of the shows, which, in my opinion, kind of slows it down in the second half. Like the first half, the Flash episode, that's actually Flash versus Arrow, or Arrow versus Flash, whatever you want to call it. Flash versus Arrow. Is really good. It goes at a great pace. There's some stuff with the Flash show, but it all works as part of the story. You get to the second half. You get to the Arrow part, and it slows down because Arrow has to have flashbacks. I mean, while these flashbacks are integral to the overall story of how, setting up that Oliver can torture someone, it really... I've said this with Lost. There are some times in a show like this when you have flashbacks, when the flashbacks can help and hurt your show, especially depending on how the flashbacks are. I think for this particular episode, they should have foregone the flashbacks and just stayed in present time. I know that the flashbacks were sort of integral to the overall plot, but I feel like if you could take them out, it probably wouldn't have mattered, because this is when Oliver was in China. And I really don't care how Oliver, this is not really how Oliver learned how to torture, it's how he failed at trying to torture someone. And it's really, I don't want to see him fail, I want to see him succeed, and this just doesn't work overall, especially when you're trying to do a crossover with the Flash, and you're going back and forth between the action, and we want to see the crossover with the Flash, and you're doing flashbacks. It just doesn't work. That's why I say the first part was better than the second part. And I also felt that they repeat some of the same problems. Not problem with him, but when Arrow shows up, the Flash, he doesn't want to team up. Arrow in the first episode, Arrow shows up in Central City, and Flash is like, we can team up. He's like, no, I don't want to. And then in the next part, in part 2, the Arrow episode, he shows up to help them, and Oliver's like, Barry, it was a one-time thing. We don't need to team up. And then they end up teaming up again. It's like, why did we need to retread that? Why did we need to have him push back again? You know, he was pushing against him. He's like, no, I don't want to team up. And then finally, he resolves to, only to then in this episode, no, I don't want to team up. Okay, let's team up. You know? And other than the flashbacks, I think the rest of the Arrow story is pretty well done. You take the flashbacks out, and I think it would have been more cohesive. I just think that the flashbacks kind of throw it off because you're trying to watch this story, and then a flashback comes in, and you gotta sit there. And you gotta wait for it to get done, and then you get back to the story. You know, in that kind of way, I think that. See, I've always had a problem with these crossovers where it's like, oh, we have this crossover, but each episode still plays with still tries to keep to the format of the other show. And that's why everybody's like, I don't get why everyone hates Crisis. Crisis to me felt like a big 5-hour extravaganza of stuff. It didn't feel like individual stories being told. It felt like one big story. But in these early crossovers, they don't feel that way. And this one, I think maybe the next one does feel like that, but they also try to also deal with things from the other TV shows that I always feel as we get going. I think I'll explain, but like, I think by Crisis on Earth X, they realize the problems that they have because, like I'm already gonna say this because that's gonna be one of my problems. Problem with Invasion is that right in the middle of it, they stopped everything to pay homage to 100 episodes of Arrow, and it's like a big halt to it to have this alternate world episode where the aliens have Oliver and the Arrow people. I don't remember how they are. We'll get to it. And it just stops as we're in this alternate world, and they gotta figure out that they're not really in this place, that it's all in their head. So then we can continue with the last part afterwards. Just that always bugs me. But it feels like Crisis on Earth X is where they finally decided we need to have a cohesive story and not worry so much about our individual parts. Here, not so much. It doesn't feel like one continuous crossover. It feels like episode of Flash, episode of Arrow, with both sets of characters on each show. There's no overarching villain. And the villains they use, Nick Terabay as Digger Harkness, Captain Boomerang, is a good villain. If he was the main villain for both episodes, I think it would have worked better. But that wouldn't have been Flash vs. Arrow. So we have Roy G. Bigelow, or Rainbow Raider, or Prism, put the whammy on Barry so he goes nuts. Well, it does further some stories with Eddie. By the way, watching this, okay, going back and watching these, like, especially like the first part, it's really made me miss the early seasons of The Flash. Like, Rick Cosnett is such a good actor, and that's why I'm hoping that the Eddie, he's come back. If you don't know, spoiler alert, he's come back on the show. And the Eddie that showed up to Iris, I'm hoping it's not just a construct for Deathstorm, and that it's something else. Because it could really, even if it's not Cobalt Blue, which everyone wants, including myself, even if it's not Cobalt Blue, have it be something that, because it always sucks when you bring back an actor and it's like, oh, they're not the real character, they're just a hologram or an illusion or something, and it's like, why bring that actor back if they're not going to play that character, or they're going to play, like, over the years, Harrison Wells, has been very different versions, and it was fun. After a while, I got a little long in the tooth, and I finally decided, okay, we're done with that. And it's been the same thing with other. So we're going to keep the actor, we're going to change the character. Legends did it with Constantine and then Gwen Davies, which we didn't really get to see how far that went because it was canceled. And they've done it before with alternate versions of like Black Canary, Black Siren, whatever. Multiverse is cool. You don't need to exploit it too much. And even if this is like an evil Eddie from the multiverse, that would be okay. Even though supposedly the multiverse doesn't exist, although we know it does. There are people out there on like Facebook groups, people will talk about, I wonder if we'll ever see like other Earths. And they're like, the multiverse is gone. Didn't you watch Crisis? Did you watch Crisis? Because at the end, they showed that there's a new multiverse. And that's their defense. Well, didn't you watch Crisis? The multiverse is gone. Did you watch Crisis? A new multiverse was created. I'm just saying. They wanted to incorporate, although with shows being ended and canceled, I don't know how much of a universe they created, but, moving on, right? And I liked this, seeing Oliver and Barry, on screen together. It's been a long time. It's 2019, right? 2019, 2020, 2 years, right? The end of Crisis was 2020, right? So, yeah. It was cool to see them working together. Strength. I laughed a lot with these. Cisco. Man, I never realized how much I missed Cisco until watching this. Oh, I want to run some tests. I want to run some tests on it right now. Oh, God. I mean, I love me some Chester P, right? But Cisco, I don't know. It's just something about Cisco. I miss him. I do. But yeah, overall, I think it was a decent start to the crossover. But as someone who's watched all the crossovers, this is probably the least crossover feeling crossover, if you know what I mean. Like, there's two different villains, and it feels like two different shows. It doesn't feel like one big story, But, by the way, these were aired like, I'm very confused on the time frame, because wasn't it The Flash was on Tuesday, Arrow was on Wednesday, right? So why did they say that we helped you out last week when it was like last night, right? Shouldn't have been. It wasn't a week in between, was it? I'll have to look at the air dates, I guess. Actually, I could do that quick. Hold on. I have the seasons. Where did I put it? Okay, I know that Flash is here. And my favorite. Jeez. Arrow, though, might be harder to get to. Season 3, right? Alright. So we got, I should have got these out, I didn't think about it. So we got The Flash Season 1. Arrow Season 3, which is the... Okay, so... Get out the bookies here. Maybe this will answer my question. It'll be like, oh, they weren't ready. I swear they were a day apart. Yeah, they say a week. Alright. Flash vs. Arrow. Original air date 12/2/14. Arrow. Brave and the Bold. Original air date 12/3/14. Yeah, they messed up. Because they say last week and it was the day before. So, why was there a week in between episodes? They were aired right after each other, like a day apart from each other. So, I don't know. Trying to think of what I would give. Well, I guess I don't. TV stuff, I don't give ratings. That's right. That was the Raw Rewind. I'm doing a different rating system, not this one. Overall, though, I thought it was decent. It was a fun going back and seeing this stuff, but yeah. So, next, Heroes United or whatever it's called. Legends of Today and Yesterday, technically, but that'll be next. So what are your thoughts on Flash versus Arrow crossover? That when it comes below, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'm Scotty, and I'll see you in the next one.